All right, so today we are going to go over a introduction to what Spectrum is and what FRC is, which is the competition we compete in. Roughly, we're going to talk about kind of what the roles of our mentors are, which we'll go over who our mentors are, myself and a few other people, and then what we do as students and kind of what our entire mission as a program is and how all of you can fit into that and be awesome members of our team. Okay, so what is Spectrum? So Spectrum isn't really like most other clubs or teams that we have either on campus or you've had at other schools. We are the engineering team for St. Agnes Academy and Strake Jesuit. So we are joint between both schools. Our lab is at Strake currently. Our lab used to be at Agnes, so it's kind of whatever school can give us space. But our mission is broader than just the competition we compete in, which we're going to focus on a lot today, is that competition. But in general, our mission is to empower and better the lives of our students. We want to develop all of your skills, get you interested and excited about science technology, hopefully, or just passionate about problem solving or figuring out ways that you can help improve the world. There's a lot of ways to do it, and it doesn't necessarily have to be engineering or math or science related. We've had alumni who go off and be awesome English teachers. We've had all sorts of people who have found ways to help our team. So they're different. We can find ways for your interest to help. We also do a lot of things to just work on being a team and having fun and facilitating a good, strong culture where we're all happy to be here and happy to be doing things that we're excited about and that we think are important. A lot of that involves a process of creating a robot, and it all kind of evolves around that process, but we're more than just creating a robot. Okay, so specifically what we do, like I said, promote and develop our team members into exceptional people. A lot of it is how do we work with you through high school to get you into, to get you happy and healthy and going off to college in the best state that you can be in, and then being able to do awesome things after that as well. Design, develop, and build robots for high school robotics competitions. We develop useful skills in a whole host of areas, creativity, cooperation, communication, programming and actual building of the robot. Media creation is something we focus on as well. We like to promote different educational opportunities, so we'll share things from outside organizations that you can take advantage of that can help in different areas as well. We also work outside of just our team and our team members to support the growth and development of programs in our schools, our community, in other schools in our area, in schools around the world. If anything we can do to help kind of push more STEM programs and get more opportunities like this to more students, not just in our schools. And we also collaborate with other schools and organizations to better support their STEM development. So we partner with a lot of organizations to run camps and things that we'll talk about in a little bit. So there's a lot of service and things that go into what our team does as well. And we also volunteer outside of the STEM world. A lot of our stuff that we do focuses on hunger, just because it's kind of what we've been doing for a while, but we do some different things to collect food for the food bank. We've done food distributions. We volunteered directly at the food bank. We have quite a few different things like that. There's some other community activities that we do as well with local organizations around Houston. We help after natural disasters. There's a lot of different things that kind of fit into our mission that aren't just the robot. Okay, who are we? So I'm Alan Gregory. I'm the head coach for the team. I've been doing educational robotics for 18 years. This will be my 19th. 4 as a student in Central Texas. I went to Shoemaker High School in Killeen, Texas. And then I came to Houston to go to Rice University, and I helped start a team at Lamar High School in Houston. So I was with them for 4 years. And then I've been with St. Agnes and Strake since 2011, 2012 school year. I am actually an employee of St. Agnes Academy, but our lab is at Strake, so I spend most of my time there. I'm not a teacher, so you won't see me teaching geometry or anything. My sole focus is running this team, along with some outside things that I do. But mostly anything for the schools is going to be running the engineering team. We do also have a few other mentors who help and support our team. Sue Ann Bouvier is on the call. She is a former parent for the team who has stuck around and is now an integral part of our team, has taken over large swaths of our media, awards, communication, logistics, and a whole host of other things. She is just infinitely helpful in the things that we do and making our team better. So if you're interested in any of those areas, Suan's kind of the person organizing and directing a lot of that, those efforts. We also have 2 Strake faculty advisors that couldn't be on the call today, Jacob Walker and Damon Tran. They both help with a lot of the logistics for the team, working with the Strake administration and facilities and things like that, and making sure our team can be productive and working as well as we can over at on the Strake campus. Okay. But our mentors are only a part of the team. The bigger piece is our students by far. So most of you have already expressed interest and you're signed up to be on the team, which is awesome. But just to cover and make sure we all understand, any student from Agnes or Strake may join Spectrum at any time. So it's totally fine if people later on, if you've been on the team for a while and you have some friends who say, hey, I don't want to be in this other club anymore. What's the engineering team like? Can I still join? Absolutely. We have people join at any point throughout the year. We have people join over the summer. Whenever people are interested, they can get connected with us and we can make it work. No experience or abilities are required. There are many, many ways to help the team. Everyone can make the team better in some way, and everyone can learn to do what we do on the team. There isn't anything that you've had to do before. We will help you wherever you are at. We will figure out a way to use your abilities and talents and help you learn what you need to do to be able to help us. We try to be very, very flexible with your time. There are ways to put a lot of time and effort into the team, but there's also ways that you can put however much time you feel you want to do with the team. So if you can't make certain meetings, that's fine. No one's ever going to be like, oh, why weren't you here? That type of stuff won't happen. Nothing is ever required. You're not going to be kicked off the team if you don't make a certain number of meetings, anything like that. It's not going to happen. So if you have other clubs, activities, things that you're excited about, we encourage you to do those things. And you can work with both myself and with the coaches or leads for those other programs to make time and make things work. A lot of our stuff can be recorded. A lot of our stuff happens later or can be done after other clubs and activities. We can be really flexible when needed. What we do ask of you, though, is that you are curious and interested in what the team does. There is a lot to learn. It is very different than most things, right? Like most people have seen how basketball works. If you join the basketball team, you kind of have an idea of what you're going to learn. Most people joining the engineering team really don't have a good grasp of what we do. So there's a lot to pick up. We're going to try to make it as easy as possible. We're going to try to make it simple and break it down so that everyone can do it. But as long as you're curious and interested, we can find a way to get you where we all can learn and be productive. We do ask that you learn and help. So like definitely put in an effort to learn. So come to the training sessions whenever you can or watch the recordings, ask questions, all of those types of things are great. And then a big part of it is also just having fun and enjoying being around each other and being on the team. I don't do this for any other reason other than that I enjoy working with students who are excited and interested about what we're doing. This is what I do for my passion, basically. Like I could go and do many other things if I was just in it to make money or anything. That is clearly not why I do this. I love it, and I love working with students who love it too. So yeah, so there's a lot of times where we'll have stuff that doesn't seem all that related to what the club is. Like if you came in early and you heard our conversations, we were talking about games and stuff. A lot of that happens too, just because we like hanging out with each other and building that community. Everything that our team has ever done or become or is right now is because of passionate students like you all. Students founded the team in 2010-2011 school year before I was ever a part of it. There were students from both schools who got together and said, we want to do this FRC challenge thing. We know it's going to be hard, but we think we can figure it out. And they worked with both administrations to get the schools to have a FRC robotics team, engineering team. That was a collaboration project. So this was all a student idea. I came on afterwards and started help moving it in the right direction. But it all started because of students who were excited about it. And then every bit of success we've had since then has been because of dedicated students who have worked hard, who have learned, who have put in lots of time and effort into making this program what it is today. Okay, so what is it that we actually are working on? So our main program that we're in is FRC, which stands for the First Robotics Competition. It's a program where teams of students and mentors from around the world are given a new game challenge each season. They must design, build, and operate a robot to compete with and against other teams to win matches, events, and awards, while embracing the philosophies of gracious professionalism and cooperation. More than robots, FRC teams work to expand STEM opportunities and address other community needs. So this is kind of the almost like the elevator pitch of what the First Robotics Competition is. There's a lot to unpack here, so we're going to kind of break it down. Um, the First Robotics Competition was started in its first season in 1992 with the vision of transforming our culture and creating a world where science technology are celebrated and where young people dream of becoming science technology leaders. So currently, and for the past basically forever, there's always been a push for students to go and do things that they see on TV. So they imitate basketball players and football players and music professionals, musicians. That's the word for it. So and things like that it's very hard to take those skills that you learn and actually become a professional in many of them, right? There's not very many professional basketball players in the world, but ideally we can make a sport and a club organization that promotes and pushes for students to want to become science technology leaders and see that it can be fun and engaging. And that's what FRC is all about. Mentors and students working together. So the program does put both high school students working alongside their teachers, engineers, scientists, parents, any adults from the community. They work together on a team to focus and to work through these problems and complete this project. So it's not just a student-run organization. It's not just students trying to do all the work. There are definitely times where the mentors are working and the problems are hard enough to where we don't. It's not like I have all the solutions. I absolutely do not. We have to solve the problems together. Mentors and students work side by side. There's no restrictions on what work an adult can do and what a student can do. There's some things where if it's maybe slightly unsafe or something where I'll take the risk and do it myself. But most of the time it's going to be me showing students how to do something and then the students running with it and doing it. Students do have to be the ones who drive and operate the robot. So just like kind of in like high school sports, the coach can be there to coach them through it, but the students are the ones actually performing the tasks. Okay. The competition is worldwide, so we will compete against and with students from all over the world. So the majority of teams are in the United States and Canada, with a pretty good group from Mexico. But then there are teams from South America, Asia, Australia, all over. And we will see a lot of them at the World Championship. That happens every year that we'll talk about later as well. But even our team specifically, we've gone and competed in China before. I've volunteered at robotics events in Mexico and Dubai. So the robotics community is very broad and worldwide. And now my slideshow won't slideshow. All right. Okay. Hopefully we can get our pictures to load. Okay, so each year we're given a brand new game challenge. That's a little bit different for what's going to happen in 2021. Each year there is a new game challenge released to all FRC teams at the same time. The game objective, game pieces, playing field are all different each year. So unlike most sports where you kind of know what game you're playing, right? They don't change the size of the basketball every year. But for us, they will change the size and it can be a totally different game piece. So sometimes we're launching balls into goals. Sometimes we are picking up balls and placing them places. Sometimes we have cubes, we've had inner tubes, we've had soccer balls. There's all sorts of different game pieces you could have in a game. And they intentionally make it very different from the game before so that students are solving new problems. There's also some tasks where the robots have to like hang or climb different things. There's a lot of different things the robots have to do, and it's different every single year. So we're always dealing with something new. Um, the teams design, build, and operate a robot. So each year we have to build a new robot for that game. And all the games are so different, you'd want a new robot anyway. None of the old robots would play it very well. There are very specific rules about robot size, specifications, um, all of those things, and they can change each year. So you have to work within the rules. And for most of the match, the robot is driven, operated by students on the sides of the field. In each match, you're not just out there for your own team. You're actually partnered with two other teams of students and mentors who built robots as well. And so your match, you're with 3 members of what's called your alliance, and you're against 3 members of the other alliance. So in this photo down below, we have 3 blue robots against 3 red robots. So our robot is here with a 3847. We'll talk about what the team number means in a little bit. But so we had 2 partners, and we were against these 3 red robots. And so at the end of the match, the total points of all the blue robots scored get added up against the total points of all the red robots, and whoever has the most points wins that match. And we'll talk about how you win events and everything as well today. But it's an interesting concept though, because you're not just trying to win for yourself. In every match, you have partners, so you always have to be working with other teams. You're strategizing with other teams to see how you're best going to play that match. So unlike in most sports where you know your teammates really well, here your teammates on the field change regularly, and you have to work together with these outside groups of people to actually everyone to perform their best. So you never want to damage any robot on the field or anything like that, because they may be your partners later, and also that's just not how the program works. Okay. So there's a lot to part of our goal is to win. So we're trying to win each match, which are basically broken down into about 2.5 minutes. So they're pretty small, they're pretty short matches, but you'll play quite a few of them over a competition. Then the event winners are an entire alliance who wins like the playoff tournament that happens at the end of the event. And then in addition to that, there are also judged awards that get taken that are taken from judges who interview our students and talk about the team and talk about the robot design. And there's a whole host of robot awards and design awards, and also awards for team attributes, such as things like, so there's awards for supporting your community, there's awards for spirit and imagery. There's a whole host of awards that you can win as well at the events, not just for robot performance. Okay. Dr. Woody Flowers was one of the co-founders of FRC. He passed away last year. He created 2 of the core philosophies that are the foundation of FRC culture as we know it, and it's definitely a different culture than how most sports are run, especially sports at a very competitive level. One of those is gracious professionalism. So as a competition, we embrace competition very much. So everybody there wants to win. But in the same time, we are empathetic and kind to our teammates, competitors, and volunteers. So we're never going to try to win at the expense of someone else. We don't want to win by any unfair means. So we're going to try really, really hard, but we're also going to try really, really hard to make sure that the people on the other side of the field who are competing against us are also having a good time, competing fairly. And by the end of it, we should all know that, yes, someone won, but no one's walking away a loser or anything like that. No one should feel dejected or anything. We all are here for a much bigger mission than just what's happening on the field. Cooperation is the second one of these values, and it's basically the idea you cooperate and compete at the same time. So a lot of times, one of the nicest ways that this is kind of shown is how much resources are shared at an event. So it'd be very odd for like a football team or something to give away and help other teams share, like give tips and things to make their opponents better. In FRC, we do it pretty constantly. Especially on our team, we share basically everything we do. So even throughout the season, we release all of our design materials. We tell people what robot we're building and exactly how we're building it. At events, we help solve problems. So we'll go to another person's pit and like help them work on their robot, or we'll loan them spare parts. And other teams will do the same for us. So if there's something we need at an event, if we need a tool or a part or something, we know we can go to dozens and dozens of other teams and ask, and they'll hand it over without any sort of qualms at all about maybe this will be the thing that allows us to win instead of them. They'll absolutely do it. So everyone is basically really nice to each other and knows that we're all trying to do something more than just win. Um, in addition, a lot of what our team does isn't just about the robot that we put on the field. We do a lot of outreach and service in a variety of different ways. The photo on the left is construction. So this is a thing that we do most falls. We probably won't be doing it this year due to COVID, but most of the time in October, November timeframe, we get donated cans from a sponsor. So we'll get about 3,000 canned goods, all like a variety of different like types, and we'll design a sculpture. So this year it was a school bus, or this past year was a school bus, and then we'll build it on a single day, and it'll be on display, and then all those canned food will get donated to the Houston Food Bank. So this is one of the ways we can use some of our design skills, so that like the students do a full 3D model of what it's going to be. They figure out exactly the process in building it and everything, while also helping our community. The photo in the middle is of a Cub Scout troop that came and to our lab, and we were able to demonstrate our robot, kind of talk to them about what we do as a team. I think we did a 3D printer demonstration with them and a few other things like that. The far right is a photo from Spectacular. It's a summer course that we teach most summers at a local Boys and Girls Club. So we bring robots to them, and we have students come through and learn how to program and design and solve problems with these robotics kits that we have. So we like to teach a lot of younger students. We've partnered with Microsoft Store. We've partnered with a few other places to run these camps and courses and get students excited about robots. Okay. These are the first core values. So these are the core values of the competition, like the organization that we're a part of. Largely, they're similar to what we believe as well, but these aren't ones that we wrote or anything. Okay. One of the questions a lot of people has is why are we called Spectrum? What is this 3847 thing? So each team is assigned a number whenever they register to be a FIRST Robotics competition team. You can kind of think of the number the same as like what's on the side of race cars, or even just like on the side back of a basketball jersey or football jersey. But you have the same number the entire time you're in the program. So there are random teams somewhere in New York or somewhere else far away. If you tell them, oh, I'm on 3847, they can look it up, or they may already know, and they can figure out a bunch about what we are and what your team is and things like that. And we'll refer to a bunch of teams by team number pretty constantly. So eventually random numbers will just start meaning things to you if we start getting more and more involved into it. Largely, team numbers are associated with age. So 3847 was founded in 2011. So and most of the other numbers, like 3,300 or so up to 3,900, were all 2011. Teams start founded in 2020. We're all in the 8,000s. And so you can kind of place teams as to where their rookie year was based on how big or small their number was. For team names, teams are completely free to choose their team name, because there are a lot of teams who aren't necessarily associated with schools, so it's not always just something school affiliated. Some are, so you will have a lot of like Robo Falcons or things like that for teams who kind of base their name off their school mascot. We chose to be Spectrum since we were a combination of the two schools, and we wanted something to kind of like somewhat be associated with this idea of like combining two schools. But we also wanted something simple and memorable. We didn't want to try to combine Tigers and Crusaders or anything like that. It would have been a little harder to remember and got wordier and stuff, and started build a theme around and brand around. And Spectrum was suggested. We had a meeting back in 2011 to kind of decide on the name, and that's what came out. We've been using it ever since. And now it's been known through a large portion of the FRC community as what we do. And so if you tell people you're on Spectrum who are also doing robots, they'll kind of know who we are. Okay, so yeah, so we're part of the FRC, but what do our team members actually do? Because it's not just robots. So there are a variety of tasks that can be done on the team. We've basically tried to break them up into these 7 categories. Roughly, there are some other things that may not fit perfectly inside of here. But basically, there are tasks. Oh, this is important. Okay, so largely, we're not going to assign anyone to any specific area. So you're encouraged to work in multiple areas of the team and not solely focus on one. Partly because by being well-rounded, you can learn how a lot of things overlap and how you can use things that you learn in one side to help with another. Um, and also, there just sometimes isn't enough work to do in a certain area, and we're all doing something else in this other area. So we'll have people, even if you just want to focus on one thing, you can definitely do that as your main thing, and that can be kind of what you're focused on. But there's often times where you're going to need to help out in other places as well. And so it's very much encouraged that people do that and work throughout everything. So you're not going to be assigned to one team and stay there your entire career on the team. You will move around, bounce around, kind of what task is needed, and you can learn a wide variety of things. One of the areas that we do and is a little bit trickier to do while we're virtual right now is the build side. So that's where we actually um, work hands-on, use power tools, use hand tools to actually build up our robot. And there's multiple other projects where we build things that are useful for the team. Um, we have a lot of really cool tools in our lab that are like 3D printers or a laser cutter um, or a CNC router that can cut parts out of aluminum. Um, we have a lot of different equipment and things in the shop that are all useful for assembling and building the robot largely. We also have to build like practice filled elements, so there's some amount of like woodworking and stuff that goes into what we do as well. So there's a lot of that does happen on the team. So that is definitely important. But it's also there's many other things that have to happen before we can just jump in and build the robot. One of those things is the design side. Um, so before we build basically almost anything on the robot, we completely design it in a 3D modeling software. Um, so we can go through and figure out, okay, this is where all these holes are going to be. This is where the motor is going to be mounted. This is how the wheels are going to work. We kind of decide all of these different aspects of the robot before we even build anything. And we also have to learn a lot of the concepts and principles so that we know that the robot we build is going to work well. We're going to be able to put it on the field and it's going to do what we want. It's going to be able to last an entire season. Um, all of those things have to kind of go into it. And a lot of what we're doing is the kind of practical aspects of mechanical engineering. So if mechanical engineering is something you're potentially interested in, um, we do a lot of that on the team where we're doing a lot of the design work for the robot. The control side of the robot is understanding how we actually are able to control the robot and not just have it be a nice, pretty sculpture, but actually have it move, how it can follow our programmed instructions, how the entire electrical system works so that the motors can all have power and they can do what they need to do. There's also a pneumatic system which uses compressed air to move parts of the robot. Um, so all of those happen with the control side of the robot. Uh, Another part of the team is strategy. So this is one of the ones where um, those first three are kind of what people think of when they think of the engineering team in robotics. The rest of this is a lot of the not necessarily intuitive parts of what we do. And an often bigger part of what we do is what's coming up. So strategy is really important. So just kind of like in any sport where you have to decide how you're going to play the game, we also have to decide how we're going to play the game each season, right? There's no one way to play the game that's going to be the best way. Um, so we have to determine what our strategy is each season before we even start building it, because we have to know kind of what the robot's going to do that we want to build. We also have to decide how we're going to play each match. So we have to figure out what our partners can do, what our opponents are going to do, and how we want to play the match. We collect data on all of the robots at the event, so we know how many goals they've scored. We know kind of like how power or how fast they can drive. Um, we have pictures of every robot, so we keep a lot of data on every robot that are at our events. We build an entire scouting system to do this. So we have like a computerized system so we can collect all that data. We can visualize it. So we have like graphs made so we can see, okay, this robot's been doing this well over matches, or this robot's getting a little bit worse or better. And we also watch matches from around the world to see who else is playing well. Are there interesting things that we can do to improve our robot or our strategy based on what other teams are doing? So we watch a lot of matches from teams from all over. Another side of the team is media. So we do a lot with photography and video, graphic design. We have social media accounts on basically any social media platform you can think of. We also run our website and maintain it. So we'll edit video for like recap videos for an event or for an entire season. There's tons of photos. We have a giant photo gallery. I think there's like 1 million photos or something crazy in it. Graphic design where we're doing logos and designing our t-shirts and banners and flyers, postcards, all sorts of things that we have produced. So there's a lot of things that can be helpful on the media side of the team. Awards is how we prep and prepare basically what we present to the judges at events. A couple of those require writing essays and kind of creating materials for them. So we create a magazine each year where we do all the graphic design and layout and kind of build it to where it's a really simplified look at what our team is so the judges can get an idea of how our team works and operates and what we do very quickly and easily. We also have to prepare students to actually speak to the judges. So there are speakers who do like a presentation for one of the awards. There's also speakers who are in the pit just talking to the judges about our robot and about our team. So all of those people are very important too once we're back in events. And then outreach, like we already talked about, is another big part of our team. So it's where we're doing our community events. We're teaching STEM classes. We do demonstrations of our robot at a lot of events. So we'll do, we normally have a booth at Comicpalooza, the big comic book festival. We've been to most of the museums, like the Flight Museum, Science Museum, Children's Museum. We've been to multiple big sporting events, like we've been to an Astros game and those types of things, demonstrating the robot. Wherever we can get in front of a lot of people and kind of talk to them and show them what this program is and what they can do with educational robotics, it's kind of what we want to do. And then we also work with, like we've already talked about, other community needs, construction, working with the food bank, those types of things. We also volunteer at a lot of other robotics competitions. So we will go and be like the referees or the judges at robotics competitions for middle school or even high school students that are just different than the one that we're part of. The kind of the way we sort of organized to be able to do all of this, hopefully we just started the system over the last summer. But we basically broke it down and we have students who have been on the team for a little while and their job is to kind of just hold the team responsible for kind of doing all of these things. So there's a lot of stuff. So sometimes those things will fall through the cracks a little bit and we won't be working on them. So we have people responsible for making sure things are getting done. They're not necessarily the ones that have to do it. They just have to like kind of keep it at the front of mind for all of us that, hey, we need to be making sure we're maintaining our old robots, or we need to make sure that we have this another thing that we're doing with education or something. So we have people who are responsible for that and we're working through that process as well. Okay. So how does like our entire calendar work? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about now is how does this all time through and space out throughout the year? The FRC season, maybe. Apologize. Let me see if we can get the slideshow working. All right, Google. Okay. The FRC season is roughly broken up into like kind of 3 parts: kickoff, build season, competition season, and off season. Kickoff is only a single day, so it's the fastest part by far. Normally, it's the first Saturday in January. That isn't the first or second because of New Year's. Basically, that's the day everyone around the world who is going to participate in FRC finds out what that year's game is. So we get a game animation video that kind of shows us the overview of what the game is. And we also get the full manual, which is a good 100-page document or something that says all the different rules for how the game is going to be played, all the different rules for how the robots can be built, how the tournaments are all going to work, how the awards work. All of that is built into the game manual that we get on that first Saturday in January. And then that's the day where you can begin kind of thinking about what your robot's going to do and designing and building it. Okay. Build season is everything that happens basically after kickoff leading up to our first competition. So we get the game, so we all learn what we're going to do, and we very quickly have to start figuring out what we're going to design and figuring out how we're going to build it all. Because we have about a little less than 2 months normally to do the entire robot design and build process. So it happens really fast in January and February to get it all done before our first event. We also have to test and practice with the full robot before we go to an event. We don't want to just show up and it be the first time we ever drove it is at the event. We want to be ready to compete when we get there. Competition season is roughly about a month and a half where there are multiple events happening around the world. And in Texas, we have district events. So there were 13 district events last year spread out over 5 weeks. So we had to figure out which ones made the most sense for us to go to. Last year's season got cut short because of COVID quarantine, so we only got to go to our first event. So we were in Dripping Springs at the very beginning of the season, right at the end of February, and we won that event, so that was fun. But there are also some places also have regionals, which are slightly bigger events, and those all normally happen between March and April, or like the end of February and the beginning of April, or at the end of April. For 2021, that should read 2021. We're a little unknown as to when these events are going to happen. The schedule's kind of in flux a little bit because of COVID and just not knowing exactly how things are going to play out. Competition season continues with the state championships and world championship. So if we do well enough at our districts, which we almost always do, we'll be able to go to our state championship, which is normally early April. And there it's basically the top 64 teams from the entire state of Texas and state of New Mexico, because we're all together in like this one district. And then if we do well enough at the state championship, we get to move on to the world championship, which happens in mid-April normally. So coming up for 2021, it's likely that our state championship is probably back sometime in June, and our world championship is probably in July. So we're kind of pushing everything back to give hopefully more time for us to pass through everything that's happening with COVID and quarantining and everything like that. Because it's really impossible to put this many people in a closed space right now, because there are thousands of people at each of our events. You don't necessarily have to win your other events to move on. So you just have to do well enough. So there's basically a point system. And if you get enough points, you can move on to your state championship and you can move on to your world championship from there. In the 1 year that we had the district system, we very easily moved into states and worlds. And we think we'll be able to continue doing that if we continue to perform the way we have over the last few years. So after the world championship is over, which is normally the end of April, this next year it'll be the end of July, our off season starts. So that is basically the time between, it's normally June all the way into December, and it's when we're organizing our team, and we also have events put on by teams that aren't part of like the official schedule or anything. They're just times to practice and learn and get better at being an FRC team, basically. So we host one of those events. So normally in the middle of July, we take over the Strake Jesuit gym, the competition gym, and the practice gyms, and we have a event called the Texas Robotics Invitational that we host and we're in charge of, and we get teams to come to and everything to play. It's also a time where we do a lot of our outreach activities. So since we're not in the intensity of the building competition schedule, we have a little bit more time to help other people and work through and work with other groups to bring them robotics programming and things like that. It's also when the majority of our training gets done too. That's kind of specific training tasks and not sort of train on the job that we'll do during build season. Okay. Any questions before we moved on? All right. So we've talked a lot about like what the team is and what we do on it, but you really haven't seen the robots actually do anything yet. So we'll do that as we talk about what an FRC match actually looks like. So we've already talked about alliances, but I'll repeat a little bit. Basically, there's 6 robots on the field at each time, separated into 3 blue and 3 red. They're all built by separate teams and organizations, and you're always having to work together with other ones to figure out your strategy and how you're going to compete best that match. The robot bumpers, these blue and red things, are basically like the robot's football pads. So it allows teams to run into each other, hit each other at pretty high speeds without damaging each other. So we're not battle bots. We're not trying to destroy the other robots ever. But it is a full contact sport for the robots. They're able to kind of hit each other, push each other around, all within the rules. There's sometimes like safe zones where they're not allowed to hit each other. So it just kind of depends on the game. The way the matches are kind of broken up is there's a pre-match, there's an autonomous mode, the driver control period. Most games have an end game, and the post-match we're kind of cleaning up after the match. So at the pre-match, all the teams are allowed to basically set up their robot. So they're within the rules a specific way that you're allowed to set your robot, where it kind of has to be on the field. A lot of times you're able to load a certain amount of game pieces. So the game up in the top right corner, there were these yellow balls that the robot had to launch into a goal. So the students would bring out the robot, set it down, get it in position, and they would load balls into it that it was able to start the match with already having some balls loaded into it. We also take our driver station, which is a laptop and controllers, to a shelf on the side of the field, and that's where the robots will drive. That's where the humans will drive the robot from. That's where our students will drive the robot from. And then teams and volunteers, we also verify that everything's ready on the field and it's set up the way the rules say it's supposed to be set up. At the beginning of the match, you'll normally have somebody come over the microphone. They're called the MC, and they kind of keep the whole flow of the event going, and they're the ones talking through the speaker system. And they'll basically give everybody a 3, 2, 1, go. And for the first 10 to 15 seconds of the match, depending on what game and what year it is, the robots will do things autonomously where the students aren't allowed to touch the controls during that time. So in this game, which we'll watch a match of in a little bit, they had to the robots basically were able to shoot balls into the goal without being controlled by the drivers. Point values are normally a little bit more in autonomous because they're doing it alone. So that's a very important part of the match. It kind of starts your match off well. So if you win autonomous, if you have more points at the end of autonomous than your opponents, it's easier to keep having more points than your opponent. So it's a really necessary part of the game. Driver control is the majority of the match. It's normally about 2 minutes and 15 seconds or so. And that's when the drivers are responsible for moving the robot around. They're basically driving with, our team normally uses Xbox controllers. So able to drive the robot and command it to do all sorts of tasks, pick up the balls, launch the balls, climb, all of those things are done through the controller. We have cameras mounted on the robot, so there are certain things the drivers can see from the robot's perspective for some of it. If the robot's behind something, or if they just need to see kind of what the robot's picking up, anything like that, they can use the cameras for. And then a lot of the programming does happen in this driver control period. So instead of having like the drivers have to manually sort of aim the robot at the goal, we'll have like a single button that the drivers will just push, and the robot will automatically figure out where it's supposed to shoot and be ready to start firing. So there's a lot of things where we can make it really easy on the drivers. Instead of having to take a lot of time and doing things manually, we can automate a lot of those tasks. So there's a lot of programming, even when it's not the autonomous mode. There's still a lot of programming that goes into it. The end game task is the last portion of driver control, basically, and sort of how you get points for getting your robot into a certain position when the match ends. Often that is basically the robot climbing or hanging, or being a certain like height off the ground. In 2020, the robot had to hang from this bar and sometimes balance with a partner. So this whole like kind of bar thing could rotate back and forth. And if you had it balanced with multiple robots on it, you got more points. In 2019, this game, your robot got points if your bumpers were all above a certain like platform. So if you were above this third platform, you got more points than if your bumpers were above the second platform, or if you were just on this first platform. So our robot was actually able to like deploy a suction cup and like grab on here and then lift the whole robot up straight up into the air. At the end of the match, you'll get the final score for the match. You'll also, it's also when the robot or the teams will go grab the robot, take it off of whatever it needs to, put the game pieces back on the field, and exit the field area after the match. Okay, so let's watch a couple matches. Give me 1 second to pull it up. Share and share computer sound. Okay, so this is a match from the World Championship in Houston in 2019. So this is one of our qualification matches.
We're ready to get this match started. Space Explorers between lines. 3, 2, 1, go.
So this is the first part of the match, which in 2019 was called Sandstorm and not autonomous mode. But here in most games is when the robots would be controlled by their own programming and not the drivers. This game, you basically got points for being able to put these like hatch panels, which are these flat discs, on a couple different scoring areas. So you'll see our robot down here on the right doing it right now. They stuck that panel onto that rocket. These kind of things in the corners, or these things right here, are supposed to be, they're called rockets for the game. So a lot of the games are themed. This was a space-themed game.
Up, and missed this one.
You also got points for putting these cargo balls in behind these hatch panels. So there were some spots you could do on the rockets and on this thing called the cargo ship.
And up and in this time.
So all of this right now is being controlled by the drivers. So our drivers are over here in the Blue Alliance station controlling our robot. And so now we're coming in and we're grabbing and scoring some of the cargo. I think we're doing another. We're trying to do a hatch. I think this one we dropped the hatch again.
They dropped it, headed back, got another hatch.
So there's definitely things we can improve and do better on all the
Full
time.
Metal Jackets missed a shot on the rocket. 32-32 tie ball game. 70 seconds to go. Spectrum going high on the rocket, and they've got a hatch panel in place. Good job, Spectrum. 1296 right behind him with cargo for that rocket.
One of the things in this game, you got a bonus if you could fill one of these rockets. So you had to put 6 hatch panels and 6 of the orange balls into the rocket, and you got a ranking point, which is kind of, it helps you with the ranks. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So that's why we're over here working with our partner to be able to fill this rocket.
Looks like they may stay there, wait for the end game. 45-35, 10-point lead, 39 seconds to go. 2 more bits of cargo for Blue. Now make that 1. Looks like Blue may be getting a ranking point very soon.
All right, so we got the ranking point. We filled our cargo. We filled our rocket. And then now we start the end game. So our robot's going to be over here, and it's going to put down its suction cup, and it's going to lift ourselves into the air for the end game.
Blues up by 19 points. Vector's going up, going up, going up. Looks like they've got it if they can move forward. 9 seconds to go. 1296 going for a level 2 climb. And Spectrum is up. 2-1. That's the match.
All right. So that's the end of the match, and then we'll get the final score. So Blue Alliance won that match, which is one of the ones we were on. It kind of has a score breakdown. So these are all different ways you get points in that game. And you can see our rank was 6th at the time, and it moved up from there, which was good. So we had been ranked a little bit lower, and we went up to 6. We have another match from this past season in 2020, which we'll show now. Anyone have any questions about that? Cool.
Lines in 3, 2, 1, go!
We kick our semifinal off. Immediate barrage
so
of fire
we're on
from
the red
all
alliance
the
this time,
blue
so we're over on
robots.
the left.
A barrage from
shot balls
3847
in
and
autonomous mode, so it
1477.
did that all without human drivers.
Robots
and
quiet. It's a 5-point advantage for red.
2-1.
Drivers take control. It is all dead even now after autonomous.
Then from here, we're able to pick up some balls.
Let's see if they can be there can be an upset.
In this game, our goal was basically just to
Lano
shoot those balls into
the Robo Raiders there, picking up from
the red
there.
goal.
Trench run. Meanwhile,
You have this blue robot coming over to
Texas
play
Torque
defense
doing
on
the
us,
same.
on our alliance. So they're basically trying to stop
More
us from
accuracy
scoring.
coming from the Robo Raiders than from Torque, but both putting up reputable numbers. Live scoring indicates a 1-point advantage for red. This is shaping up to be a good rivalry. Spectrum getting beat up by 55-72 with the count going on them. But that count is safe. The Robo Raiders dunking, putting more up. Texas Torque following in kind. It is advantage blue, underdogs coming and striking hard. 32-40, Team Orion ready to play some defense. Spectrum with the barrage, high velocity barrage. It is still advantage blue, 9-point advantage. But as we have seen, it will come down to the end game.
This match was a semifinal, so this is into the playoffs already. So
the Robo Raiders fire one.
If we win this match and one more against our opponents, we would go into the finals.
Meanwhile, Torque with 100% accuracy on that volley, it is still advantage red. But Spectrum is looking to change that. Live scoring gives it now to red with a 1-point advantage. But the Robo Raiders are looking to change that, taking it back to blue. Torque lines up, they shoot, they get 2 for 2, they get 2 for 3. It is still advantage blue by only 1 point. It is going to come down to the wire as we enter endgame.
This is the endgame now, so the last 30 seconds. That sound is there to signal the drivers and everyone in the arena kind of what the endgame is.
572 hooks are up. 1477.
And then our 2 robots are going to try to climb and balance on this bar.
18 seconds to go.
So we extend like these hooks up, grab the bar, and then our robot got pulled up off the air. Our partner robot did the same thing.
572.
And so then we get the bar balanced. And that gives us more points than the opponent.
They're almost in. They're still not in. They're in now. And that is the game.
All right. And then so the rest of this is kind of like cleanup. So this is all that post-match. So the volunteers kind of set up all the balls again. Teams come pull their robots from the hanging position, and we wait for that final score. And so the final score of this one was 156 to 124. So we won in red. We go on to win the next semifinal match and our 2 final matches as well. So we won the Dripping Springs event in March of last year. Okay. Any questions about how the events are run? There's a couple more things to talk about. All right. I do not know why our slideshow is being so slow today. See if we can get things going. Okay. So event roles. So we do break down some specific positions when we actually go to events. We have a drive team, a pit team, our strategy and scouting team. We have some students who are working on the media side, and then we also have awards presenters. So our drive team are the people who are specifically tasked with operating the robot on the field. So we normally have a driver who's responsible for like moving the base around and putting the robot into position. We have an operator who's handling all the stuff the robot can do. So they're like in that past game, they were intaking the balls, they were shooting the balls, anything else, they operated the climber. We have a human player who, depending on the game, has a bunch of different tasks they can do. In this past one, they were responsible for loading balls onto the field. There's also a coach. That coach is normally me for most of the in-season events. So we're basically responsible for talking to the other drive teams and making sure our driver and operator are doing what they're supposed to. We also have a technician who helps with mobile maintenance when we're out on the field and organizing the cart that we have to move the robot on and off and things with. And there's another member out there to help with all those types of things before and after the match. Our pit team are the students who help actually do robot maintenance. So if something breaks during the event, or if we need to repair or make something a little bit better, the people in the pit are the ones working on doing that. They also have to keep everything clean and organized. They ensure that we have charged batteries for every match, and they also help other teams when needed. Strategy and scouting. This is probably the biggest portion. There's the biggest number of people because there's a lot of effort that goes into this because so much of the actual competition is knowing about your opponent robots and knowing about how the match strategy and things should work. So we have people who are collecting all the data. So they're figuring out exactly how often each robot climbed, how many goals did they make each match, and we collect all of that data so we can analyze it and look at it. They're providing a lot of information to the drive team so we can be ready for each match. and they help determine all of our strategies for our matches and for the playoffs. Our students who are working with media are taking photo and video. We take pictures of our team and our robot, but we also take pictures of every other robot that's at the event. We take pictures of other teams, the volunteers and everything. Our team is known for having one of the better photo galleries, so a bunch of teams who aren't as necessarily as big or as organized as we are, they'll use a lot of the photos and things that we take to help with their stuff as well. We offer it all to them for free. It's just part of the thing that we do since we're taking it all anyway. We post a lot to social media so we can try to keep members who aren't at the event, parents, supporters, kind of up to date about what's going on. And then the last part is our awards presenters. So we talked about having the award side where they have to actually present to the judges for a couple of the awards, one of them being the chairman's award. They have to actually do a 7-minute speech. So we have 3 people who are trained and set up and rehearsed to be able to give this speech and then answer questions from the judges. So that's part of what they do at the event. And then we also have some people assigned from our pit and drive team to be award presenters. So they talk to the judges in the pit kind of about our robot and about our team for some of the other awards as well. Okay, we're going to run through the event schedule pretty fast. A lot of this information you don't really need until we're about to go to an event, but it does help give some context to kind of what we do and why we do some of the things we do. So roughly each event can be anywhere from about 1 to 4 days. Most of our events are 2 or 3 days, and most of the events we'll go to have about 32 to 36 teams. Our district championship event will have like 64, and then the world championship has 400 teams, and you're divided up into multiple divisions. So you'll have about 75 teams in your division, and then if you win your division, you go and play the winners of the other divisions. In 2019, we actually won our division at the World Championship, so we were one of the final 6 alliances at that event to play for like the whole world title. Most events, you have about 8 to 12 qualification matches during the event, and then after that, it's the playoff. So that's 12 per team. So there's often 100 actual matches, but only 12 per team. At the very beginning of the event, we have what's called load-in. So we take all of our equipment that we packed up normally onto a St. Agnes bus, and we pull it all out and we set up our pit, which is the area where we're able to like work on our robot. We normally have about a 10-foot by 10-foot space where we have shelves and everything so we can organize and be ready to work on our robot if anything breaks. Robot inspection happens before any of the matches do. So we have volunteers who are responsible for making sure our robot meets all the rules. And that's not going to damage anything. It's not going to hurt anyone. It's going to be safe to operate and that it meets all the rules for that game. Most events have some amount of practice matches. There are a few matches that teams can use before they ever start counting. So these don't count for any of our ranking or qualification or anything. And they're just there so drivers can kind of test things out, make sure our robot's ready to play on that specific field, make sure nothing happened in travel or anything, and everything's ready to go. Before we start playing qualification matches, we have to know what matches we're in. And since, like we said earlier, everything's kind of randomized, you have to be with different partners. They want to make sure that all of that happens fairly. So all of that is done through the match schedule when it's generated by there's a field computer and it generates and tells you what match you're going to be in. And that can be really important because sometimes you may get a bunch of matches with robots who are all really good at the game. Sometimes you might have matches where you're against robots who are really good at the game. It tries to balance things out pretty well so that you're not, say if you get 12 matches in a day, you're not playing in the first 12 matches of the day, right? No one would want to do that. So it spaces them out pretty well. So you have matches basically running the entire span of the qualification schedule. It tries not to put you with the same people over and over again too often. And tries not to give you any back-to-back matches and things like that. But most of it is random. There's no one's like, oh, you like this person, therefore you get to play with them. There's nothing like that. It's largely random. It just tries to make it fair. For our district events, we always get 12 qualification matches. And the way the rankings work is if you win a match, you get 2 points. If you tie, you get 1. And if you lose, you get 0. If there's normally a couple specific game tasks that if you do during a match, you can also earn 1 or 2 ranking points. So like in that 2019 video, we filled that rocket. So we had all 12 game pieces scored. So that gave us 1 ranking point. And because we got enough climbing points at the end, we also got another ranking point. So we got 4 ranking points from that match. And then at the end of all the qualification matches, whoever has the most ranking points gets to rank 1. Sometime before the end of qualifications, which is normally the Friday night if our qualification matches may be on Friday, and then the rest of the event is on Saturday. Friday night, we'll have a scouting meeting. So at that point, we take all of that data that our scouting and strategy team have collected on every robot, and we basically work to kind of put all of the robots into tiers or sort of rank them out to see who is the best robot based on their actual ability, not just based on how many matches they won, right? Because if you get a really bad match schedule, you could be an awesome robot, but you could lose almost all of your matches. So we don't want to just go based on who's won or who has the most ranking points. We want to see who's going to be able to help us the most if they were on an alliance with us. Because the next day at the end of qualification, there is a alliance selection process where the top ranked teams get to pick their alliance for the playoffs. So alliance selection is that next step. So right at the end of qualification, the top 8 teams get to form their alliances by basically inviting the team that they want to play with and then inviting one more team after that. So the first ranked team gets to pick anyone they want. So they can pick the number 2 team if they want, or they could pick the number 40 team. It really is whoever they think is going to best help them on their alliance, they can pick. And then the next highest ranked team that's still left gets to pick again, gets to pick their team, all the way down until you have the 8 alliances formed. And then the number 8 captain, the person who's picking, is what we call it. We call it the captain. They get to pick their second teammate. So then they'll have 3 teams on their alliance, and it'll go back up from there back to 1. There's a kind of weird thing that happens at the World Championship where everyone gets to have a 4th team as well. So they have their own backup robot at the World Championship. There is a video explaining it all. We watched it in yesterday's, and it'll be in the link so you can go watch it yourself. It ends up causing more confusion than is needed. But basically the idea is that through the 8 playoff spots, you're going to end up with 8 3-team alliances at most of our events. And those are the ones who play in the playoffs. So it benefits you to do really well in qualifying and to get a lot of ranking points, because if you can get that number 1 spot, you can pick whoever the best robot is at the event that isn't yourself to be on your alliance. The playoff bracket is similar to some sports brackets. All of them are best 2 out of 3. So you have to win 2 matches to move on. 1 plays 8, 4 plays 5, 2 plays 7. And you'll have a quarterfinals, which are here, semifinals in the middle, and then you'll have the finals there. So it can go pretty fast, but if you win 6 matches in the playoffs, you win the event. After the playoffs are over, we have the award ceremony. So this is when all of those judged awards that we talked about earlier are handed out. So there'll be somebody announcing them. We get to go down and get trophies and medals and banners, depending on what award you won. There are some individual awards that are given out as well. There's a Woody Flowers finalist award that's given out to mentors on or a mentor on a team. There's a dean's list, which is given to certain student leaders on teams. And there's a volunteer of the year given out to one of the volunteers who helps make the event go, maybe the head ref or one of the volunteer organizers, that type of thing. And then at the very end of the event, we pack up all of our equipment, put it back on our St. Agnes bus, and head back home. Okay. Any questions about how the events work? Anything I said so far? Cool. So we do want to kind of briefly go through some of the Spectrum Slack. Ideally, all of you should have already been invited, got an email to be invited, and should have already joined, hopefully. If for some reason you don't have an invite to the Spectrum Slack, please let us know and we can do that really fast. the Slack is how we do the vast majority of our communication that isn't over Zoom. Since we have people from both schools, it doesn't make sense to do it on MySA or MySJ or whatever. It'd be really complicated to get everybody onto each one. So we use the Slack to communicate faster and easier for all of us. Ideally, you should install the app on your phone, iPad, laptop, whatever devices you use the most, so that you can keep up with the communication. Ideally, you're checking it roughly daily or whenever or you can be checking every notification. It's not that hard to keep up with. Most of you all keep up with your texts and things, I'm sure, Snapchat, whatever. This is just another thing that needs to be kind of in that rotation. The vast majority of the communication happens over Slack. There will be email reminders on occasion. I try not to flood people's email too much, but I'm going to try to keep at least some amount of weekly emails going as much as I can. So you will have some of that as well. Like I already said, you should already have a Slack invite. If for some reason you don't, let me know. Slack basics. We're not going to watch the video together as a group, but this is a pretty decent video that someone made about some of the things that you would want to change about Slack, how to set up notifications so you only get notified by certain channels and things. You can kind of customize it a lot of different ways. So that's pretty helpful to go through if you've never used it. It is pretty similar to an interface like Discord. So if you've used Discord, it's not too different. Slideshow. Okay. In general, if we can avoid direct messaging and actually use the channels. So if you have a question, post it in one of the channels that fits the most. There's also a questions channel. If there's something that it needs to be private for some reason, feel free to direct message. But as much as we can, avoid it when you can, so that I'm not answering the same question 8 times and we can get a single answer. Because basically, if one person has the question on the team, probably someone else does too. So if we can do it publicly, it's easier. Basically, if we were all in a room together and you would just come up and ask me and you wouldn't worry about other people hearing, do it in a public channel. If it was something where you'd ask me to like leave the room or you need it to be private, feel free to DM and we can work that out. Slack channel. So we reorganized all of our Slack this summer to make it easier to understand. We had a bunch of channels before. We kind of toned it down a little bit, added some that made sense, got rid of some, and made them kind of easier to understand what should go where. So all of the channels that start with an L are kind of like our logistics channels, and kind of general specific things kind of happen in them. Announcements are things that may be like to-do items or things everyone needs to know, meeting times, things like that. I'll try to put into announcements. General is not listed here, but general gets used kind of just as team chat that's about team specific things. So that'll be what's in general. But if you keep up with announcements, you should know kind of the big important things that are happening with the team. Events gets used to discuss when we're about to go to an event, or about to have to go to a competition, or a volunteer opportunity or things like that. That's where events gets used. So we know like meeting times, hotel rooms, all of that stuff handles in events. And when we're at events, we use it a lot to handle like food and whatever else we're doing, kind of organizing what's going on with the event. Our progress channel is so anytime you're working on something that's kind of team related, and you want to show that you've kind of made progress, because it's really hard for me to know what people are working on when we're not all kind of doing it in the lab anymore, because we're all virtual. So as people are working on things, if they post updates in progress, that helps me out. I know people are actually doing stuff, and I can get a feel for what's actually happening on the team. Purchases isn't super important right now. It normally happens when we're actually in the actual build process and people need to tell me we need to buy something. But if there is something really cool that you think the team needs to own, feel free to put it in purchases and we can talk about it. There's a question Slack, so if you have any questions, ask questions there. Please ask questions. I will never be annoyed if you're asking questions. I'd much rather be able to clarify and give direction than for people just to be confused in any way. Training Slack, we haven't really started using that, but as training keep moving forward, I'll probably start posting some more as we get new training modules and the new videos and stuff from those training sessions. I'm going to try to keep all in training, and we'll talk about our training schedule here in a second. So that should be what that's for. All the S channels are our main kind of the different areas that our team works in, those same 7 that we talked about earlier. So a lot of things that we do should fit into one of those 7 areas. So if there's something about social media that we want to talk about, it would be in the media channel. If there's something about tools or something, it goes in build. Design gets a lot of stuff when we're talking about CAD, which is a lot of what we've been doing lately because a lot of virtual things. All the programming and stuff goes in controls. Any of that type of thing, they have a place for it, hopefully. P are for projects. I don't think we have any project channels right now. That would be for certain things that we know are only going to last a little while. So if we had something that was coming up or some project we were all that a certain group of people were working on, they would get their own Slack channel for that. And then the X channels are all for chat that aren't really related for team items. So there's an alumni group, so there's people who are still in the chat who are graduated from the schools, and they have an alumni chat they can use. There's games for any sort of video games, online games, anything like that, can go in the games channel. Random is basically anything that doesn't have another home. So if there's something you want to talk about, random is fine. Sports is anything related to sports, clearly. There's a Spectrum Fantasy Football League that people are in, so that normally gets talked about in sports. Youngins exists. Basically, it's a place where mentors won't comment. We can still view it, though, so it's not that much different. There's not a ton of things that need to go in Youngins that can't go somewhere else. If it gets out of hand for some reason, Youngins would go away. It's been fine. We'll leave it. But most things can have another home now, so it's probably pretty easy. Okay. What are we going to do this year? So there's a lot of kind of everything's a little bit different, as everyone knows. We haven't even started in-person school yet. So because of that, we're in this kind of weird position. Because we are a group from both schools, it's even harder. And because our space is relatively small compared to how many we have or how many people we have, and we all have to like share tools and things. So it's going to get it's a little complicated for us to move back in and start working. So for a little while, we're going to stay virtual. That does mean some things are a little bit easier. Our meetings can be even more flexible since we're all just logging in over Zoom. None of our meetings are required. We'd love to have you participate as much as you want, but we absolutely do not expect you to come to every meeting. Almost no one comes to every meeting. Somebody has to miss something. So at some point, I'll have to miss things on occasion. But you should try to attend regularly, right? You're going to get the most out of the program of what you put in. So if you put in some time, we can make sure you're actually learning and following along. If you can't make certain meetings, you can watch the training sessions that are going to be recorded. So we're going to have video of all of those. There's a lot of things you can learn on your own. So if you're willing, if you'd rather not listen to me talk about it and do the kind of the training things, if you want to hear somebody else, I have videos from a bunch of other people who kind of do the same robot coaching thing around the world. There's a lot of links and training that can go on and you can learn from. So if you're excited about it, you can push ahead, or you can wait and kind of follow along with the rest of the team as we do them together. Yeah, so there's, like we said, there's a lot of COVID uncertainty. We don't know when we'll be back in the lab. We don't know when our competitions will be. We're kind of just working with what we know right now, which is that we're going to be virtual for a while. But there's a ton that we can do and go over and work with virtually, and still make sure we're all learning and being productive. So for now, our meetings will be over Zoom, and we'll know in a few months, a month, whatever, we'll start we're constantly looking at what the rules are for both schools and what makes sense to allow people back in, and what sense to do things in person that we can't do virtually. But moving forward, so we basically will have a daily meeting every day from 3 to 4, which is basically just kind of the team check-in. It's sort of just socializing, talking about what's kind of going on with people's lives, what we're doing, what the next steps are for the team. A lot of this time is going to be people driving back and forth to school on their days that they are in person, coming up once that starts shortly. So we don't want to do anything that people are going to miss necessarily during that time. So if you're just like in a car with your parents or something, you could be on the Zoom in the car if you want, however you want to do it. But you're not required to come to any of these. But if you want time to just chat with people, this is a useful time to do that. I know some people are missing socializing. This is kind of what we use that time for. At 4, most days of the week, we're going to have some sort of training session. again, we don't expect everyone to be at all of them, and they're kind of all laid out in different ways so that you'll have ones that you know you want to go to. So Mondays are going to be controls. So that's going to be the learning the electrical system and the programming. We're going to go over all of those every Monday. We're starting from, we assume that you've never done any amount of programming at all. You haven't seen any sort of electrical thing. We're going to take you from knowing nothing, hopefully to the point where you can learn and help program the robot. That's our goal. Tuesdays are what we call design review. So some of our veteran members will be doing we're basically designing a mock, we've designed an entire mock game. So it's like a fake game that we're going to have. We're going to build a robot. We're going to design a robot to play. And so Tuesdays are kind of be where we're going to check in with the progress there. But we also review everything that kind of happened in the week before, check in with any other projects and things that are happening with our students, any other areas of the team where we need to be focusing on, that sort of thing. We'll also do some amount of like team building stuff. So as many people as can come to the Tuesday meetings, the better. Because ideally we want to be able to get to know everyone. It's going to be tricky to do that over virtual. So hopefully Tuesdays will allow us to do that pretty well. Wednesday is beginner design and CAD training. So this is where we're going to talk about what do the different parts of the robot do, how do we actually do the 3D modeling to design them, and we're going to start again from the assumption that no one has any experience, which is fine and awesome, and we're going to take people through being able to model and design robot parts. Thursday is kind of our flex day. There's a whole lot of other things that we don't have enough days for. So starting next Thursday, we're doing our introduction to like the media team and what teams you can do with media. We'll have things on strategy and outreach coming up on future Thursdays. And then Friday is largely for our veteran members, but if people want to come in and watch, they can. But this has some assumption that people have had some amount of SolidWorks is one of the CAD programs that we use. It's going to be more specific to some of the things we're doing with that mock robot they're going to be designing, and going through some of the slightly more advanced tools than what would someone who has never seen the program before. You're welcome to join any of them. The Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are definitely all should be targeted more towards you. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday for sure. But feel free to come to whatever ones you can, and all of them will be recorded so you can watch them at your own convenience. Okay. In addition, the way we're kind of running training is we have a Google Classroom. It's not tied to either of the schools. So for Strake students, you can't use your Strake account. You have to use a personal Gmail account to join. Strake won't let you use your Strake account to join classrooms that aren't part of Strake. And if we were a part of Strake, we couldn't have Agnes people join. It would be a whole mess. So this is the easiest solution that we have. This link is in the Slack in a couple places, but I'll post it again, and this entire slide deck will be posted. So once you join that, you'll be able to kind of view the different training slides and go through, and if you want to move ahead, you can before we do it together. And there will be some amount of like assignments and things, but nothing is, you don't get a grade from this. This doesn't affect your GPA or anything. This is all optional after school stuff. But it's more just so I can have some feel for how people are learning, and I can adjust how fast we're going, the speed of what we're doing, based on what everybody knows. Yeah, but we basically want to leave with welcoming you to the team. We're all excited to have new students join us this year. And now if anyone has any other questions. Oh, we did have a question yesterday about costs that I didn't include in there. Nothing, you don't have to pay anything, especially while we're virtual. It won't cost anything. We do have members pay for their apparel. So we have like shirts, hoodies, and things with the Spectrum logos on it that if you're going to come to events with us, we would ask that you pay for. It's all pretty cheap. And then you do pay a portion of your travel expenses if you're going to one of our travel away events where we have to get a hotel, or some of our even further away events where we have to get a charter bus. So we've gone to Indianapolis before and things, so we have to pay some of that travel. But other than that, the program does not cost anything. So if you want to be on it and just learn, that's totally fine, and we won't ask you to pay for anything. Anyone have any other questions? Today's the day of no questions.
Very, very quiet today.
Oh yeah, we got through this thing like 30 minutes faster than yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday was like 5:30.